Колеги, вітання. Український кризовий медіа-центр продовжує.
Hello, colleagues. The Ukraine Crisis Media Center continues its work, and the next briefing topic is the first electronic petition has collected the necessary 25,000 votes. Signatures. Is it victory or just one first step? What's to be done next? And the speakers are Diana Protsenko and Viktor Afanasieva. They are experts of the Reanimation package of reforms, and Zen Antipop, who is a Ukrainian blogger and activist. Hello, colleagues. Thank you, we thank the Ukraine Crisis Media Center for the opportunity to dwell not only on the petition, which is the leader, but also to tell you about what the electronic petition is, because the law is quite recent. So all the events around electronic petitions are developing rather fast, and we have to explain a lot so that it is more understandable for people and for local self-government bodies and state bodies. So the issue itself of the electronic petition, we should start from the fact that this is just one of the instruments of electronic democracy. When you have an opportunity to use the information, computer and electronic technologies to provide for a wider and real right of the people to take part in governing the state affairs. So when the information technologies are used with the view to actually provide for this right, then there is a opportunity not to stage different protest actions with Molotov cocktails, but to do this in a peaceful way. The electronic democracy in Ukraine has not been introduced yet, although there is a recommendation on the European level which was adopted as far back as in 2009, but electronic petition is the first such tool which has been introduced in Ukraine, and Victoria Afanasieva will dwell on this, but the essence of the electronic petition, I'd like to tell about this. The Maidan has shown for Ukraine one of the accents that it is important that the public and the local self-government bodies finally learn to talk to each other in the way that they hear each other, and they can agree that they organize the dialogue with the help of effective instruments and tools. So electronic petition is just the first step to this with the use of electronic tools. It is not an obligatory instrument, and the fact that it has got the attention of bodies of power does not mean that everything that is there in the text is to be implemented. And I give the floor to Victoria Afanasieva, who will explain us the mechanics. Hello, everybody. The law that was recently adopted on electronic petitions, which in fact is amendments to the law on the applications and addresses of the government. Due to this instrument, we can address bodies of power, the president, the cabinet of ministers, and local self-government bodies as well. In order for the electronic petition to go to the addressee, you have to collect a number a certain number of signatures over 3 months, and for state bodies this is 25,000 signatures. What's happening after this? We have a case when tonight, 25,000 signatures were collected for the first petition, but what's going to happen with this petition and how it will be considered? The first electronic petition was addressed to the President of Ukraine, and within 3 days the administration of the President has to publish the information about the beginning of the consideration of this petition. Then, within 10 working days, the petition has to be considered, and the law does not specify how it should be considered. However, they should involve as many experts and public as possible. This is a rather intricate and delicate petition, so we do think that there should be a lot of meetings with initiators of the petition and with experts, and then after this happened, it should be published. The decision should be published, and it of course will depend on how well the public will be able to make their point. The answer should be well founded and well balanced, and it should be published on the site of the President's administration and sent to the author of the petition as well. What have we seen when we launched this petition? First of all, there was a huge preparation before the petition was published, as it quotes the draft law registered in the Parliament. It also has a specifically formulated article that the authors asked to introduce into the Constitution of Ukraine. So first of all, we should pay attention to the process of preparation and correct formulation of this petition. This one was prepared by a public association, a professional union or an association of those who own firearms. So they involved all the stakeholders, and of course we can work with such a petition in a more efficient way if you involve all the stakeholders who will help you to collect the necessary number of signatures. So we are talking about the consolidation of civil society to support a petition. And then another remark: the law provides for the opportunity to collect signatures both on state-run and public-run portals. The first petition collected the necessary number of signatures on the portal of the President of Ukraine, and to dwell on this, I give the floor back to Diana Protsenko. Thank you. And a small brief review and why we have decided to review the petitions that are there on the President's portal. You have seen that there's a lot of petitions there, and one of the petitions has got 25,000 signatures within several days, and some of them have already 3,000 to 4,000, and 5,000 and 6,000 and 13,000 signatures of support. Among such petitions, we have to pay attention to the essence of the petitions and contents of petitions. Maybe some non-adequate, or maybe some that are not in public interest, because in itself the electronic petition is the appeal to consider an issue which is very, very important for the public. Among those, when we covered in our previous interviews whether you should filter the petitions to avoid non-adequate petitions, for instance, whether the non-adequate petition can discredit public activists who are fighting for this or that right. And when we are talking about whether there should be pre-moderation, and now on the side of the President of Ukraine, there are quite a lot of petitions that are important and of interest to the public society, but also there are some that are not within the competence of the president, like, for instance, petitions about inviting some restaurant to work in Ukraine. However, among the most popular petitions, they are rather adequate. For instance, a petition to remove MPs' immunity or to introduce the system of electronic voting with a fingerprint in Verkhovna Rada, in the parliament, or introduction of some additional measures for those who repair roads in Ukraine. So we see, in fact, that petitions are being initiated and supported that are important for Ukrainians. As for the future petitions, another advice from us, because we worked on this instrument, when you're preparing the petition for launch, you have to think whether this issue is of interest only for your organization, or you should look for allies, or whether you have assembled all the stakeholders that could work together with you. And maybe Zen Antipop will tell you more about this. Thank you, Diana. First of all, as a representative of the civil society here, I'd like to say that we are real glad that the authorities, by way of launching the system of electronic petitions, has demonstrated that they are ready to listen to the people, to their requests and needs, and to what actually concerns the Ukrainian society. I think this is very indicative that this petition became the first among all the other petitions that collected the needed number of signatures, and it has collected the 25,000 signatures not within 3 months, as the term is, but within 5 days. This is very indicative, and this refutes a lot of myths, including sociological myths, who say that this topic is not interesting for the society. In fact, everything is on the contrary, and this fact corroborates it. As it was put correctly, this petition was very well prepared. There is a draft law, a specific draft law, worked out by the public and introduced, tabled in the parliament in December last year, 1135/1, about civil armaments and ammunition. In spite of being there registered for almost a year, it's not been considered by the parliament as yet, and this petition is another attempt of the civil society to knock on the authorities' door and draw their attention to the problem. Why this problem is important? First, the powerful civil society has to be powerful not only in a in the direct sense of the word as well. The changes that we and amendments that we suggest should be made in the Constitution are in fact analogous to the Second Amendment of the U.S. Bill of Rights. And this amendment in the USA is considered one of the basic freedoms of a citizen, on which the entire Western democracy is based. I think we should not ignore this experience, but we should introduce it as soon as possible and implement it. We can quote not only the experience of the US, but also some of the individual states in the USA where the issue is regulated in the way that it does decrease the number of killings and the entire criminal acts. We also can quote the European experience and the experience of former Soviet states like Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, and Moldova, our neighbor, where they have these issues regulated for over 20 years, including the pistols for the population. And as we see, these are the states that have the same history and the same mentality. So the reference to Ukrainians who allegedly have a different mentality are not convincing. It is in these countries that the experience of legalizing the hand weapons does influence positively the level of street criminal acts, robberies, so we should adopt this in this country. Also, they say this is not timely because there's war and we have self-proclaimed republics in the East, but I'd like to point you to the fact that in Moldova this law was adopted in 1994 during the active phase of Transnistria conflict, and the conflict was one of the reasons for this law to be adopted. Same in the Baltic states, where there was a threat on the part of Russia, and these countries in fact gave the right to their citizens to arm themselves, because the armed society is the best guarantor that the enemy won't win over this country, because you can win over even 500,000 strong army, but you cannot defeat the army of armed citizens. And we can quote the examples of Switzerland or Israel, and those who are interested in this issue will be impressed at how the myths about the arms do not correspond to reality. Let's imagine that in the East the population had arms, then the terrorists who appeared in our East half a year ago and who actually got their weapons from the local police would not have a chance, because people who had grenade launchers and other weapons to shoot or shell the Ukrainian positions, they were saying, what can we do? Those guys have submachine guns. But if at least half of the families had the registered legal weapons, I think the distribution of forces would have been rather different, and the result would have been the interest. You should not be afraid of a legal legally registered weapons because they are not used for crimes, and crimes are perpetrated with the help of illegal and unregistered weapons. So the aim of the petition is to legalize and implement all those things in the legal field. Ukraine is the only country in Europe where there's no law on weapons. This is nonsense. We now have an increase in illegal weapons because of the conflict in the East, and this is the weapon that they use to perpetrate crimes. The issue of legalizing the arms, the weapons, is the issue of arming law-abiding citizens, because the criminals are armed for quite a long time anyway. And they do not think whether this is a legal weapon or not legal weapon. And law-obedient citizens cannot protect themselves if the weapon is not legally accessible. Whatever kind of policing you have, you cannot put a policeman to protect a citizen 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If they try to scare us off with the so-called Wild West, if the legal, if there is legalization of arms, but let's remind the citizens that statistics says it, that in the Wild West, where everyone carried arms, there were 5 times as little killings as in modern unarmed Ukraine. So let's look into this profoundly and adopt this Second Amendment to our Constitution, so to say, and this law. The more so that the law, apart from these important issues that I mentioned, will also decrease corruption in this sphere, because today's regulations, which are illegal and which are regulated only by the Ministry of the Interior and are not based on the Constitution, are designed so that the corruption component increases, and the issues of permits for firearms and selling firearms is a huge source of corruption, and putting this issue into a legal framework will not only solve the issue of the safety of Ukrainian citizens, but also will send a lot of money into the budget.
I would like to comment a bit. I like your idea when you suggested let's discuss it. I would like to point out your attention to the phrase, let us discuss it before making final decision, and this is a sign of positive changes in Ukrainian society. We have suggested some formulation, but some language for the legislation, but it does not mean that it will be passed in the same formulation. We should hear the arguments supporting, arguments pro, and we should hear the arguments contra. And these arguments should be heard in public space. We should weight both arguments and understand whether they simply express positions of different people, or they reflect different ideas, different beliefs of the parts of society, and we should find the balance when both extreme interests could be balanced and brought to compromise. I think that this discussion and the talks about this topic are stirred up during a long period of time. I participate in many talk shows, and the discussion goes on. We are not the lobbyists of some somebody's position. We lobby the position of the citizens of Ukraine. I do not represent any weapon producers. When we speak about the parties, I can see Ukrainian society as one party and a party of corruptioners who earn the crime proceeds or corruption proceeds from the schemes related to illegal circulation of arms. And sometimes people who are not familiar with the issue, they contribute to this discussion, and this adds arguments to those corrupt people who are interested in this issue not being regulated by legislation. I would like to warn you against too radical changes of the formulations, because too radical changes in formulations may bring this, can make this law useless. We based our formulations on the experience of other countries and aimed our formulations to the objective to raise incomes of the national budget. Thank you very much for your briefing. Whether there are any questions? Olena Sipchenko, UCMC. I would like to get specifications from you. Do you expect this petition will reach the president? Whether those people who submitted the petition, whether they will be invited to some sort of interview? What is the procedure? The procedure does not provide for any interviews or any further dialogue, but I think we should initiate some sort of dialogue and reunite people and encourage them to appeal to the president. So the legislation does not regulate any further interviews or meetings or roundtables. You may describe your positions in mass media. I would like to add, maybe this is about procedure, how the petitions should be processed and dealt with. At the level of the legislation, we have a possibility to hold public hearings and parliamentary hearings. And in case the initiators of the petition indicate that they wish to have parliamentary hearings or public hearings, then they can proceed with this. The president, civil society, they could be neutral experts. Nevertheless, we have brought this issue to the public attention, to the public space, and further feedback from the president also should be in the public space. Alongside with the changes to the Constitution, and we mentioned 1135/1 draft law. This bill was initiated by the Ukrainian weapon producers. This is an association, but they also involved the professional lawyers, and it was discussed by civil society on the website of this association, and everybody could suggest some changes to it. I believe it could be improved or it could be drafted better, but nevertheless we have the draft law, and let's involve the President to our discussion and get some feedback from him. And finally, we hope that the discussion will start, and this won't be just a formal discussion aimed at bringing in changes which will annihilate the entire law, but this will be a fruitful discussion, and let us change our lives finally. Also, I would like to say that you cannot escape the issue all your life. I raise many other issues in my civil work as a civil activist, and quite often I hear quite often it's not right time to raise this problem. I do not think it's not right time. This very fact that this petition has received 25,000 supporting votes proves that it is right time for it. In the east of Ukraine, we have a conflict. Let us assume that we pass this draft law on legalization of arms, and let's assume that some servicemen come back from the front line. They have the very sharp feeling of justice. Cannot they abuse this weapon, the use of these arms? Currently, the illegal arms which circulate among people are very numerous. It's very easy to buy it. It's much easier to buy these arms and much cheaper for people. So those people who are inadequate to some extent, they won't be able to buy illegal arms. Now, I do not wish to buy illegal arms, and but when the numbers of these arms grow more and more, it might be easier to buy it for many people. And more arms are coming from the east, and we should put it under control. It is not the issue how easy you will get your permit, but this is the issue of registering your personal arms, because the real registration means registration of your of your fingerprints, and when your fingerprints are registered and this small arms belongs to you, then you would be very cautious with it, and this will allow us to control this weapon against those which are uncontrolled now. This is the first petition about legalization of arms. But this is not actually the major topic for our discussion. This is a bright demonstration that this tool is instrumental. It is working. Now we have a website. Even with some technical nuances in its performance, it is working, and it allows people to express their concerns to the power, and the power is able to respond somehow, to provide feedback. And we are happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much, dear colleagues. We are going to round of this briefing, and whoever has questions may ask them